Welcome to the Consistent 24, where we turn habits into success and talents into profits. Let's get started.
Okay, so you know how everyone's always saying, just follow your passion.
Yeah, it's
Easier said than done, right?
Yeah.
Like, what if your passion is, let's just be real here, binge watching those amazing baking shows? You're not alone if you are. But that's why we are doing this deep dive into Cal Newport's So Good They Can't Ignore You. We're going to ditch the cliches today and really try to figure out how to build a career that you really love, like without waiting for that passion fairy to show up.
And what I think is so interesting about this book is it really pushes back against that idea that we hear all the time, right? Like, find your passion and everything else will fall into place. But here's the thing. The research actually shows that job satisfaction has been decreasing for decades.
Yeah, it's true.
It's kind of wild.
And Newport even talks about this guy, Thomas, who took follow your passion, really literally.
Oh, really?
He was really into Zen Buddhism, got like multiple degrees in it.
Wow.
So obviously he's like, I'm going to become a monk, like total bliss.
Right.
And it turns out even monasteries have like honeydew lists.
Yeah, and that's where it gets so interesting, I think, because it's not just like this guy Thomas, right? It's like this whole trend that's happening where people are less satisfied with their jobs, even though we talk about passion all the time. Maybe we're thinking about this whole career thing the wrong way.
Right. So instead of chasing that passion, which is kind of hard to grasp anyway, Newport actually quotes Steve Martin.
Oh, interesting.
Do you remember that line, be so good they can't ignore you?
Yes?
And it's not even about comedy.
Hmm.
He's saying that actually you become good at something first, and then the passion kind of follows. It's not the other way around.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. When you're really good at something, you've developed these skills. You're like an expert at what you do. You're not just showing up and doing the bare minimum. You're really excelling. And that, in and of itself, can bring a lot of satisfaction.
And that's when the passion comes in a lot of times.
Exactly.
So to illustrate this whole thing, he talks about Jordan Tice, who's an amazing bluegrass guitarist.
Okay.
And this guy's practice routine is like next level. It's like he's an Olympic athlete or something.
Right.
Hours every day, like pushing his limits, always getting better.
Yeah.
So dedicated.
And see, that's the thing. It's like he compares that to how most of us approach our work. We get to a certain level of skill and we're like, good, I'm good. And I get it, pushing yourself is hard.
It's uncomfortable.
It is really uncomfortable. But that's the thing. That's the difference between just being good and being like exceptional. Deliberately practicing and pushing your boundaries. And Newport calls this building career capital.
So let's talk about this idea of career capital. What is that?
So basically, it's anything that makes you more valuable in your career. So that could be specialized skills, a really strong professional network. Maybe you have some unique knowledge or experience.
So you're kind of building up your assets, but it's in the context of your work life.
Exactly. And so the idea is that the more career capital you have, the more options you're going to have. You'll have more leverage to negotiate for the kind of work that you want to be doing, to have more autonomy in your work, and ultimately to just feel more fulfilled.
And you know what makes me think of autonomy is, remember that couple we were talking about?
Yeah.
They had a red fire farm.
Oh, yeah.
And it seemed like they really had it made. Like they were growing organic food, doing their own thing, calling the shots.
Yeah.
And it turns out that feeling of control that you have over your work, that's a huge part of finding a job that you actually like to do.
And it makes sense, right? Like having a say in how you do your work, who you work with, and the impact that you have, that can be really motivating. And it's not just like a nice idea or something. Research has shown that having autonomy at work is connected to better performance. People are happier and companies actually do better overall.
Wow.
But, and this is but there are these traps that you can fall into when you're trying to get that autonomy.
Traps. What kind of traps?
So Newport talks about two main ones that you want to make sure that you avoid. And it comes down to this. Timing and strategy are super important when it comes to looking for more control at work. You can't just go in there and demand autonomy if you don't have the experience or the skills to back it up.
Yeah, because then it's just like a fantasy, not a real career path.
So the first trap is that you just want more freedom. You're like, I am done with this 9-to-5 thing.
Yeah.
So you're going to go freelance.
Right.
But you don't actually have the skills or the clients yet to really make it work.
Oof. That's rough.
That can be tough.
Yeah, so that's trap number one. Unsustainable autonomy.
Yeah, it's like trying to build a house without a good foundation.
Right.
It might look okay at first, but it's going to fall apart eventually.
So how do you avoid that trap?
Career capital. You got to be good at what you do so that you have choices and options.
Yeah.
Like, take this software developer, Lulu.
Okay.
She wanted to have more control, too, over her career, but she was smart about it.
Okay.
So instead of, like, immediately quitting her job, she focused on becoming amazing at what she did, like so good that her employers couldn't imagine not having her.
Right.
So then she was able to negotiate for things that she wanted, like being able to work remotely, being able to set her own hours.
Right.
And because she had that career capital built up, she was able to go freelance, and it actually worked out for her.
Wow, she played the long game.
She did. But, and this is kind of crazy, even when you do everything right, even when you build up that solid foundation of career capital, there's another trap.
Oh, no. What is trap number 2?
This one is sneaky. This is what happens. You get so good at your job that your company's like, we will do whatever it takes to keep you here.
Yeah.
You become too valuable.
And they're throwing like counter offers at you and promotions.
They're like, we need you.
But we need you here.
Exactly. And so there you are. You want that freedom and autonomy.
Right.
But it's comfortable. They're paying you well. They appreciate you.
Ugh. Yeah, those golden handcuffs.
Exactly. Those are the golden handcuffs.
So building career capital comes with its own kind of problems almost.
It does. You have to find that sweet spot.
Right.
But even with all this talk about career capital and control, there's this other really important thing like we haven't talked about yet.
Yeah.
Like, what's the driving force behind all of this?
Yeah. Where's that sense of purpose come in?
Exactly. Newport talks about this idea of having a compelling why. And he uses this guy, Derek Sivers, as an example.
Right.
He's a serial entrepreneur.
Okay.
And his whole thing is, do what people will pay for.
Do what people will pay for. Okay.
Which, you know, at first might sound a little mercenary, but it's actually pretty deep.
Okay, I'm listening.
Yeah.
So how does getting paid connect to finding your purpose?
Because it's not really about the money itself. It's about the value that you're offering. If people are willing to pay you for your skills, for what you create your ideas,
Right.
it means that you're giving them something that they actually need, something that's useful to them, that they connect with.
Okay.
And that's how you know you're doing something right, that your work actually has meaning and purpose.
It's like that idea, find a need and fill it. But it's not just any need. It's a need that you can fill using your specific skills and talents.
Exactly. And if people are paying for it, you're onto something.
Yeah.
And that's where that sense of mission comes in.
Yeah.
It's not just about being really good at something, but it's about using what you're good at to actually make a difference, to do something good in the world.
And that mission, sometimes it kind of pops up in unexpected places.
Yeah.
Like, remember Pardee Sabeti, that Harvard professor who's doing that awesome work fighting off those old diseases?
Yes.
I mean, her passion is contagious.
Oh, totally.
But her path to get there wasn't exactly a straight line.
Right.
Like that big why that she had, it didn't really click for her until she was already far into her career.
And I think that's important because it's so easy to think that you need to have it all figured out.
Yeah.
You know, like, what's my big purpose when you're just starting out?
Right, from day one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But just like finding that balance of control timing is everything. And that reminds me of what we were talking about earlier, the adjacent possible.
Okay, the adjacent possible. How does that play into finding your mission?
Right.
Adjacent possible. Remind me about that.
So it's a scientific concept, but basically it means that the biggest breakthroughs usually happen when you're already really deep into a certain field.
Okay.
Like, you need to know how to play the game before you can, like, invent a new one.
Right, so you need that base of knowledge to even see what's missing or what needs to change or like what's possible.
Exactly. And finding your mission, that thing you're meant to do, it often works the same way. So you get really good at what you do. You master your craft, and then all of a sudden you start to see it. You see the gaps, the unsolved problems, the chances to make a real difference. It's like that aha moment, but it comes from really knowing your stuff, not just hoping for the best.
So we shouldn't freak out if we don't have that big life purpose figured out right away.
Right.
It's more about building those skills, first becoming an expert, and then that mission will kind of reveal itself along the way.
It happens more organically that way, and it's a lot less pressure, too. And to help with that, Newport talks about these little bets. So instead of waiting for that big inspiration to hit you, you just start testing things out, experimenting, taking small risks.
Okay, I like that. Little bets. Tell me more.
And he ended up with his own show on the Discovery Channel.
Wow.
But he didn't start out with that goal at all. He just really loved archaeology, and he wanted other people to love it, too. So he started small, writing articles, giving talks at schools, making stuff online.
Okay.
Those were his little bets. low-risk ways to try different things and see what worked.
That feels way less scary.
Yeah.
Right? Then, like, I have to have it all planned out perfectly. You can just experiment, see what happens. I like that.
Exactly. And that's the cool thing about those little bets. They can lead you to stuff you'd never expect. Like maybe that documentary you wanted to make totally bombs, but while you're making it, you realize you love public speaking.
Right.
And then you end up giving TED Talks. Or maybe that side hustle you're doing never really takes off, but you meet people who help you get your dream job.
It's about being open to whatever happens.
Yes.
Okay, so to wrap this whole deep dive up, we've learned, forget follow your passion and instead focus on building your skills, what Newport calls your career capital. Get good at what you do so you have options and control over your work life. And then that thing that makes you tick your mission that'll come as you go.
It's a much more active approach, right?
It is. It's like
Yeah.
you're building your dream career instead of waiting for it to just fall into your lap.
Exactly. You're in the driver's seat. So for everyone listening, just think about this. What are you already good at? What are you naturally interested in? What's one small step, a little bit you could make today to start building a career that really excites you, even if you don't have it all figured out right now?
What if the best careers aren't found, but made? Something to think about.
Yeah.
Thanks for diving into So Good They Can't Ignore You.
Thanks for tuning in to The Consistent 24. If you found value, subscribe and leave a review. Remember to check the synopsis for more free ways to unlock your potential and build profits. The Consistent 24, just listen to learn.